Good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the Sunday show for Indiana without all of the both sides bad faith BS. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm broadcasting from Bloomington, back home in my own home studio after a week out on the West Coast. Lovely out there. I know where I'm escaping to if things get too heavy here. But in the meantime, there's a lot going on this week across Indiana and beyond, and I've got a great panel of guests here to discuss it with me this morning. First, let us welcome Mr. Derrick Holder. How are you this morning, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Love to have you. Derrick here ran for Congress in Indiana's 4th Congressional District last year, doing some consulting now, trying to help out first-time candidates. Very important work, and I thank you for it, sir.
Thank you.
First timer to the Who's Left universe here, Carlie Dunn. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I really love what you're doing, pointing out corruption, especially in law enforcement up in LaPorte County. Personal to me, I am from Michigan City originally, still have a lot of friends back there. And I always like to know what's going on, even when it's not the best stuff going on, still important to know. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Also, welcoming back to the Who's Left stage for first time in a long time. We glad we're getting a chance to rectify that. Josh Lowry, chair of the Hamilton County Democratic Party. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be on here.
Hey, you're doing a podcast of your own now these days, I see.
I am. You inspired me. I thought we needed, actually, in all seriousness, I think we need more, and I think there have been a lot of people doing this already, but Indiana-specific content. And so I just kind of wanted to make sure to do my part.
It's important because the zone is so flooded with right-wing slop that it's important to get the truth out there and try and push back, get that into the information stream, into the algorithm. So let's start today. We're going to talk about some national stories first, and there's a lot of big stuff going on. We're going to start with the Supreme Court this week. Man, I wish we had an attorney here to talk about this. Oh, hey, we do. So let's begin. On Monday, the Supreme Court lifted a lower court order that prevented the Trump administration from deporting migrants to countries that are not their places of origin without first giving them the chance to raise fears of torture, persecution, or death. I am quoting from CBS News here. In a dissenting opinion, Justice Sonia Sotomayor accused the federal government of flagrantly unlawful conduct and called the majority's decision to intervene at this stage in the case inexcusable. She says the government has made clear in word and deed that it feels itself unconstrained by law, free to deport anyone, anywhere, without notice or an opportunity to be heard. As part of Trump's immigration agenda and plans for mass deportations, his administration has approached nations like Costa Rica, Panama, and Rwanda about accepting immigrants who are not their citizens. The administration has also already detained countless Venezuelan migrants in El Salvador. We've seen the pictures from there. 60 Minutes investigation found the vast majority of these folks have no criminal records. Additionally, there were groups of migrants from Laos, Vietnam, and the Philippines who were being prepared to be deported to Libya and Saudi Arabia. The Supreme Court has just said this stuff is okay. Josh, let's start with you. This is in your wheelhouse. What do you think about all this?
It's crazy. That's like just from the perspective of a human looking at this, that we're sending, like, the idea of a deportation is that you send someone back to where they came from, and we're sending people to just random places. But this is one of a whole string. I know we're going to talk about some more, but a whole string of cases by this Supreme Court that has been absurdly deferential to the president. And I don't think any of these one decisions can be taken by itself. There is this idea among this the 6 conservative justices on the Supreme Court that what the president says goes, and there should be minimal, if any, oversight. And I don't know. That's crazy to me, because the whole thing I was always taught in law school about this whole Federalist Society was that they wanted less government, and yet the Supreme Court keeps giving the president more power. And I mean, I think it's hard to take away from anything other than 3 of them were appointed by Trump, and the others appreciate that Trump gave them the conservative majority they've always wanted to overturn Roe versus Wade. So now they're going to do whatever he asks, basically.
Yeah, this seems like I remember them talking about the unconstrained unitary executive during the Bush administration, right? They were pushing toward that then. Roberts and Alito and Clarence Thomas, they've always been on board with this. But with the 3 Trump appointees, yeah, they're completely unrestrained in giving the executive whatever he wants. And you said the Federalist Society, they want a smaller government. It looks like they just want government to be one person, and it's the king, and he can say whatever goes.
But they only want. Real quick, I just want to point out they only want the government to be one person if it's a Republican in charge.
Right.
That's very key to their rulings.
Yeah, Derrick, thoughts?
Forgot where the mute button was. It's scary at this point in time to, give that much power to one person, and for them to just unilaterally go, you, and you are illegal, please go. Not even a please, it's just go. And to be sent to Libya, like,
right?
Okay,
failed state.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I know 2 Marines that I served with actually got deported down to Venezuela. They were citizens. They earned their citizenship and they were deported. It's like they're just picking up everybody. And it's tearing families apart, and they're not caring whatsoever.
I'm interested to know how that. I mean, we've heard stories of them deporting citizens. We've heard, including children with cancer. Mm-hmm. We've heard stories of ridiculous, like veterans scooped up. If anybody, don't get. I got to move on before I get too angry to continue. Also, in the Supreme Court this week, Thursday, another backdoor blow to Planned Parenthood, ruling that states may cut off Medicaid reimbursements for the organization's non-abortion medical services as well. At issue was a provision of the federal Medicaid law that guarantees Medicaid patients the ability to choose their doctors, or in the words of the statute, they are entitled to any qualified and willing provider, which, sounds like Planned Parenthood would count as. South Carolina, however, maintained that it could disqualify Medicaid providers for any reason that state law allows. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, writing for the dissenting liberal justices, said this decision will strip Medicaid recipients all over the country of a deeply personal freedom, the ability to decide who treats us at our most vulnerable. The Planned Parenthood CEO, Alexis McGill Johnson, in an interview with NPR, said the decision would have widespread ramifications and would allow 17 states to strip Planned Parenthood clinics of the ability to provide non-abortion medical services to rural and low-income people. It's not abortion. It's not about abortion. They hate Planned Parenthood in its entirety. Right? These are undeniably tough days for Planned Parenthood. This article from NPR goes on to say, which also faces the possibility that the Republican Congress will soon cut off all its Medicaid funding in every state in the country. Carlie, you're a woman. How does that make you feel?
I think I might have an unpopular opinion about this situation because for me, I think organizations should be preparing for any administration. So if they didn't see this coming, that would be a failure on their part, I think. And I know that's a harsh criticism, but I do think if I was in an organization and I want to provide the best quality of services to my population that I'm serving, I would prepare for anything. And they have been a target for years, and they knew that they were going to be a target under this administration. So, and this is a messaging problem as well, and an educational marketing problem, because I think if we're advocating for, the right to choose, then why are we focused on Planned Parenthood's just being an abortion clinic? I think we should be educating people that they are more than just that. And I think that's what the focus was on for Planned Parenthood, and there's a stigmatization around them. So I think that could have been prevented by, if we as Democrats were educating the voters more about in the public about what else they do.
Yeah, but even, I mean, like you said, they saw this coming. They knew this was coming. They've been a target for, I mean, as long as I've been paying attention my entire life.
Right.
It's not like it's a secret. I'm
Right.
sure they were prepared. But if you have a hostile government and a hostile court,
Right.
what are you going to do, right?
There literally needed to be a plan B, and I don't think they have one.
And well, pun intended, and now you can't go there and get any plan B.
Right, exactly.
Josh, this, explain it to me like I'm 5. I don't know, man. Like, if you don't have the right to your own body and your own provider, how is this a free country?
It's a free country for me, for a straight white male. Like I hate, honestly, I think this has been one of the things that's been really hard for me to articulate, right? Because as an attorney, I want to try to give like the legal explanation for things.
Yeah.
But these decisions and everything are so weaved around the same underlying legal principles that you really can't come up with any other justification other than we want America to be like it used to be in the 1950s or before, right? Like, so this Medicaid decision, the way the Supreme Court got around deciding it, so the state had decided they weren't going to provide funds for Medicaid. A woman sued, and the Supreme Court said, no, you don't have the standing, meaning you don't have the ability to sue to challenge this. But when they ruled against Biden's student loan forgiveness, they said that a person that didn't qualify for the student loan forgiveness had standing to sue. Those two things are incompatible, right? The only difference is one of them was done by a Republican and one of them was done by a Democrat. And it becomes very, very difficult to look at all these Supreme Court decisions together and come away with any other way than to tell, like if I were teaching a constitutional law class right now, I would tell the students, like, look, here's how you know how the Supreme Court's going to rule. If a Republican is in charge, they'll rule in their favor. If a Democrat's in charge, they'll rule against them. And that's kind of the only underlying thing. This is part of their 50-year-long plan to send us back to the 1950s, and this current Supreme Court's just doing its part.
Absolutely. If anybody out there listening wants a good backstory on this, The Lever, that's David Sirota's publication, his website, did a podcast called Master Plan. It was like eight parts or something, really good, that gives a detailed roadmap of how the 50-year plan to take over the Supreme Court and ram through all these extreme policies, how that worked. And there's even a special episode with new Indiana University trustee Jim Bopp, one of the architects of that, a very dangerous individual who we briefly talked about a couple weeks ago here. I'm sure he'll come back up. But for right now, let's move on to another Supreme Court case from NPR. The court upholds a law in Texas stating that you need to show proof of age, so your ID, to watch adult content on the internet. Now, this is the first time that the court has imposed such requirements on adult consumers in order to protect minors from having such access. And that's the reason for this case was to prevent children from having access to pornographic material. Again, I don't think anybody's agreeing that they should have access to that, but the way Texas is doing this is by requiring every user, including adults, to first provide proof, typically via a government-issued ID, that they were at least 18 years old. Derrick, now, if you were interested in some adult content online, would you want to share your ID with that kind of website?
No, heavens no. I mean, they can get hacked very easily. They probably don't have the strongest firewalls up. And, who knows what shady, producers or whatever sell those lists to, third parties. So, yeah.
It's right for blackmail.
Yeah, I hardly ever share my driver's license number with anybody as it is. So why would I do it for watching that type of content?
Yeah. Carlie, now this is the thing that I think is particularly dangerous in this case, is that the statute in Texas, and Indiana has a similar law that was kind of held up in court waiting on this one to be litigated. The statute says that all websites that contain content that is 1/3 or more sexually suggestive in nature or harmful to children, that you have to show your ID to get to that website. Well, who defines harmful to children? And because you see where I'm going with this, they call anything they don't like pornography.
Right. There are apps and there are many tools that parents can use that they can put on children's iPads, devices, that they can control what content is coming up on, or so they don't see those imageries or explicit content. So I think my concern is just like, what are they doing with that data? And because I believe it's going to be sold. I mean, another way that they can get another dollar. So I don't understand why is it necessary to have this in place when there are so many tools that parents can use to prevent that from happening.
Yeah. It seems to me like a backdoor way to ban whatever they don't like, and you use expansive definitions of harmful to children to crush anything. I mean, it opens a whole can of worms. But I think the biggest can of worms the Supreme Court opened this week is this birthright citizenship case. The ruling on that came down yesterday, and a great piece on this from Elie Mystal, writing in The Nation, who says, with the legal sleight of hand so beloved by the Roberts Court, the ruling doesn't actually allow Trump to end birthright citizenship. It just makes it incredibly difficult for courts to stop him from ending birthright citizenship. It's a distinction, but one that's unlikely to make much of a difference if you happen to be born on the Republican side of the tracks. Once you read the fine print, it becomes clear that this decision is a historic 5-alarm catastrophe. Trump versus Casa, that's the name of this case, takes away the ability of lower court judges to issue nationwide injunctions. So that is the actual ruling here. They're not ruling on the merits of this case. They're ruling on the merits of nationwide injunctions. But what it means is lower courts are now limited to issuing rulings that apply only to the litigants who happen to be before them in their local court. Injunctions now must be narrowly tailored to give the active litigants only what they personally need and nothing more. So this means that some courts, districts, and states will still defend the concept of birthright citizenship, red, blue jurisdictions, while others will not. That could mean that whether or not a child born in America on or after June 27th, yesterday, of 2025, is considered a citizen of the United States. It will depend on what state or even what county that child happens to be born in. Josh, is Ellie reading this right?
Yes. So this one was particularly insane. I would suggest for everyone out there, whether you're an attorney or not, go read Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent. It is one of the best written pieces I've ever seen in a Supreme Court case, but also she has taken the tact of she's actually going to say to the average person, here's what's happening, not all boiled down in legalese. But I don't think people understand the extreme effect of this. So right now, if Trump passes some clearly unconstitutional law and I'm affected by it, I could go to my district court, I could sue, and I'd say, this is unconstitutional. That district court, before this decision, could say, hey, that's unconstitutional. I'm banning the injunction, temporarily banning the imposition of this unconstitutional act until the Supreme Court has a chance to rule on it finally. What the Supreme Court said now is that doesn't apply nationally anymore. So what they are saying is a district court judge can look at Trump's action and say that is unconstitutional, but we have to allow it to go into effect in other states, in other places. Well, it's already been ruled unconstitutional. At least one district court judge thinks that this is likely unconstitutional. Like, that's absurd. That's bananas. Like, they are saying it is likely that there will be a determination by a Supreme Court that this was unconstitutional, but we're going to allow the government to do this unconstitutional act to certain people. And the extra kicker is they said that basically every court before them for 200 years was misinterpreting Congress's grant of power to the courts. So the Supreme Court never thought of this before. No court ever noticed this. This was just for 200 years. Everybody got it wrong. There is no explanation other than the fact these justices want Donald Trump to have more power. Because believe you me, the next time there's a Democratic president, they will find a way that that action is blocked by one judge.
Of course. Yeah, you mentioned the 200 years of this precedent, right? Writing for the majority, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Hoosier, can we disown her? She wrote, her principal reasoning for this case is the High Court of Chancery in England, which existed at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. That's what she references. Okay, number one, this is a 14th Amendment case. The 14th Amendment was written, some 100 years after the founding of the country. That shouldn't matter. That should render the fact that we rebelled and broke away from England and told the king to shove it should mean that it doesn't matter what what's going on in the High Court of Chancery in England at the time of our Constitution. I don't know, man. I'm insane. Ms. Stahl closes by saying many of the legal fights brought against Trump over these first few months of his fascist reign are now moot and will have to be relitigated. And that I think this is what Josh was getting at by removing this ability for courts to do this nationwide injunction. That's all that was holding back a lot of his worst stuff, and not just on this. Scary stuff. Also scary stuff. The regime, fascist regimes in particularly, love a good war. Now, we all remember earlier this week, it looked like we were on the verge of full-scale war in the Middle East. Fortunately, it appears we've got a ceasefire holding, and this is a ceasefire that apparently Trump arranged, so, credit there, I guess. But it looked like it may not hold on Tuesday. Trump said, and I quote, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've ever seen. And he goes on to say, we basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Derrick, did it shock the ears to hear the F-bomb come out of the President of the United States' mouth?
No, Lord, no. And great Trump, by the way.
Thank you. I've been working on it.
It sounds like it. Real quick, I didn't get a chance to talk on the last part. I just wanted to say, if Trump really hated his kids that much, he could have just told them so they don't get deported because of birthright citizenship. I mean, that's a strange way to say you hate your kids, but okay, there's that. The whole Israel-Iran thing, yeah, they've been going at it for thousands of years. Yeah, different names for the areas, but they've been going at it for thousands of years. It's not going to stop. I mean, until there is a major sit down with all the groups involved in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not going to chill out all of a sudden. I mean, in my mind, when Trump was saying, hey, I gave you a deadline, you had 12 hours, and then Israel launches bombs within an hour, they were within the, letter of the ceasefire. So is Iran. I mean, yeah, it's petty as heck, but I mean, they were within the framework of it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, also in Iran, Israel news, remember last weekend that the U.S. struck the three big Iranian nuclear sites after Israel had launched some of their own strikes. There are conflicting intelligence reports this week. The first one from the Defense Intelligence Agency said the strikes may have only set the nuclear program back a few months, that the enriched uranium stocks were not eliminated and they were likely moved before these strikes occurred. And Trump rails against this, against his own intelligence community and the media for reporting this story. And the next day, his CIA director comes out and says, oh, no, the nuclear program was severely damaged in recent airstrikes and that several key sites were destroyed, obliterated. And then Tulsi Gabbard comes out and offers a similar assessment. Carlie, are the CIA and Gabbard making shit up to cover for bad intelligence, or do you think, oh, okay, there's really conflicting reports here?
I think that's the issue for me, is the confidence in the intelligence or the information that the public is getting. And I actually talked to a couple war veterans because I wanted to hear their perspective on the issue. And they were all for Iran to be bombed, I'm sorry. And so I think the history is so important because a lot of people don't understand how long this conflict has been going on with Iran and how they have, funded multiple terrorist groups. So I think this caused a lot of fear within, America that there was going to be World War III happening. So that caused a lot of fear. And if we had more information provided to the public and more confidence that, the nuclear facility was actually completely gone, then I think that the public would feel a lot better. But just with the intelligence that we're getting and like the information, it just doesn't seem clear, which is concerning, I think, in that there's no confidence that are they going to stop now, or is this going to continue, and what does that look like in the future for America to be involved? Are we going to be, are we not? And it looks like they're okay with being involved in the future.
Yeah. Where's Congress in all this is what I want to know. This was the U.S. strikes on Iran were an unprovoked attack on a sovereign nation by a country, on a country we are not at war with, who has never attacked us, who, we disagree with on many issues, sure, but this is one man, the president of the United States, saying, go do it. There's been bipartisan pushback in Congress from this. Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat, and Republican Thomas Massie wanted to invoke the War Powers Act, which, again, states only Congress can declare war. Speaker Mike Johnson then asserted himself that the War Powers Act is in and of itself unconstitutional, and that the president should have unfettered authority to declare war and peace. Again, Josh, I'm coming to you because you're the attorney here and you know your Constitution. I thought Congress declared war.
They're supposed to.
Yeah.
I think we have to remember when the Constitution was created, the idea that there would be bombing missions that could be decided for the Middle East and, done within hours of the decision, like that stuff never crossed their mind, right? The idea of war when the Constitution was written required literal physical people going somewhere. So that is what they're thinking about. And this goes to the whole thing. I mean, when we were talking about the constitutional interpretation, we've kind of just gotten into this place where if it benefits a Republican, the Republicans are for it. If it doesn't, then they're not for it. And it's that simple. Would it probably be a good thing that, we follow the Constitution? Probably, just because that gives us some sort of baseline and it's not ad hoc decisions of how we're doing the international stuff. But I think my biggest concern, honestly, with all this was I really think Israel was able to sweet talk Trump into doing these bombings. Like, look, hey, we've set it up for you, but we need your help. We can't do this on our own. We need the big bad Donald Trump to come save us. Mm-hmm. And Trump has never met a piece of flattery that he won't accept. And that's more concerning to me than possibly anything, that we now have precedent where if you flatter the president enough, he will actually drop bombs. Before, it was a lot of grifting, and that's terrible too.
Yeah.
But now you can literally sweet talk the president of the United States of America into bombing another country. That's very concerning.
Yes, very. Another piece of flattery for the president this week, though. he was in The Hague for a NATO meeting. Hopefully, it's not his last trip to The Hague. But the NATO chief from the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, spent a whole day kissing Trump's ass, literally called him daddy on stage, said Europe is going to pay in a big way, as they should, and it will be your win. He also said to Trump, you will achieve something no American president in decades could get done. And the thing that they're really driving at here was the crown jewel of this gathering, a promise for European countries to spend 5% of their GDP on defense. Most aren't spending 2% right now. That's a huge sum of money. And this was a Trump branded product. He's been pushing for Europe to spend more on defense as long as he's been in the public eye, I think. One thing that came out of this meeting is, there's a war right there on Europe's back door in Ukraine's war against Russia. Probably the most pressing issue on their plate. Not really. Nothing came out of that at all, really. This was excised from the meeting's final declaration. The first time it has been missing since Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022. Gee, Carlie, I don't know. Why do those Russia rumors keep sticking around?
I don't know. I can't get over the fact that somebody called him daddy, like in this professional NATO meeting. So that's just what sticks out to me with that. Yeah, I have nothing else. It's just the daddy is disgusting, and we have to stop that kind of rhetoric because it's absolutely repulsive.
It is gross. It is repulsive. If flattery works to move Trump in your direction, do you do it anyway, Derrick?
No. Me personally, and I believe most people have the moral sense to not do that. And plus, it just makes you feel icky to try to flatter someone that much. No.
Yeah, and this is the head of NATO. You are a professional, high-level grown-ass man. You do not call anybody daddy. It's weird. Last thing,
unless you're into that, I mean.
Well, yeah, hey, no judgment, but yeah, in a professional setting, I don't know, man. Last thing I wanted to talk about here before we get to our Indiana stories. One of the richest men in the world, Jeff Bezos, married Lauren Sanchez in Venice, Italy yesterday, in a wedding that lasted all weekend, started Thursday. Expected to cost $23 to $34 million, with locals in Venice revolting against this thing. A group called No Space for Bezos threatened to disrupt the guests' arrival with inflatable alligators, and a different group called Everybody Hates Elon, guess they hate Bezos too. Fair enough. They unfurled a large banner in Piazza San Marco bearing the legend, "If you can rent Venice for your wedding, then you can pay more tax." This pressure from locals made Bezos change venues to a less accessible hall outside of the city center, a renovated maritime area on the outer edge of Venice, a 14th century complex known for hosting the Venice Biennial Art Fair, surrounded by water and impossible to reach by land when connecting bridges are raised. Literally castles and drawbridges for the oligarchs. What do you get the couple that has everything like the Bezoses do for their wedding present? I say his and her guillotines. Quick hits. What's everybody getting these guys?
Oh, I'm getting them a copy of The Great Gatsby and telling them to read it and realize, hey, we've already seen this.
Yep. Derek, what are you getting? What are you getting? The happy couple.
Copy of the DVD for Les Mis.
There you go. That's a good one. Carlie, what are you picking out from the registry?
Well, Gretchen Whitmer was reading this huge binder of like 1,000 stories of individuals who are on Medicaid that are at risk of being cut off. So I would send them that.
Love it. Very good answers on the fly, everybody. I appreciate it. Congratulations to the happy couple. Let's move on to our Indiana stories in a segment I like to call Around the Corn. So, first things first. We've been covering this story for quite a while, and we just keep getting new developments all the time. In Indianapolis, we've been following the scandal in the mayor's office. Just quick recap. Last July, the Indianapolis Star published an investigation detailing accusations of sexual harassment and assault against Mayor Joe Hogsett's top aide, Thomas Cook, from 3 different women. At this point, we've had multiple city county council persons call for Hogsett's resignation, starting all the way back in last August with Democrat Jesse Brown, who has since been kicked out of the Democratic caucus. There's been a committee formed to investigate this. They hired a big law firm to investigate and present a report, which came out in February. This investigation found out that while Cook violated city policies, the mayor and his administration technically acted in compliance. Well, it turns out there were some things maybe omitted from this report that include creepy behavior by the mayor himself. City council meeting a couple weeks ago, council president Samuel Osili had one of these survivors forcibly removed from the building while she was trying to make a statement during public comments. A Democratic strategist was groped during this process. We've had a couple more counselors call for Hogsett's resignation since then. Last week, we talked about the pictured counselor, Krista Carlino, becoming the 3rd Democrat and the 4th counselor overall to call for Hogsett's resignation. She also called for Osili and Council Vice President Allie Brown to step down from leadership, kinda, sorta, maybe alluding to their collusion in limiting the scope of the investigation to only Thomas Cook. So on Tuesday, in a Democratic Party caucus meeting, apparently Carlino was booted from the caucus. And great reporting all week from Abdul Hakim Shahbaz, Indy Politics. All this stuff in this section is quoting from him. So Indy Politics was told that the caucus vote was overwhelming, with members indicating that Carlino had offered no evidence to support her claims of undue influence on the investigation, nor had she raised those concerns internally before making her statement, which she made in a budget hearing. So it wasn't in the caucus. It was public first. And that is sort of their beef. So apparently Carlino was given the opportunity to acknowledge she was wrong and retract her statements, but she did not do so. Wednesday, she issued an apology, acknowledging her actions caused division and unintended personal pain. But she stood her ground. She didn't apologize for the substance of her remarks, more just that she surprised her colleagues with them in that setting. Thursday, in an interview with Shahbaz, she defended her calls for the mayor to resign, pushed back on personal attacks made by Vice President Allie Brown in a podcast appearance, and she said she expected disagreement but didn't expect character assassination. Quote, "I stand by everything I've said," she insisted. "I believe it was germane to the discussion. It was important that my colleagues understood why I was voting the way I did. She clarified that she had been kicked out of the caucus and given a 24-hour ultimatum to issue a public apology, or the vote to eliminate her would stand. So it sounds like she's still in the caucus. Man, that's got to be a difficult meeting going forward. Josh, you're a party chair. How would you handle internal disagreements within your organization like that?
Yeah, well, I've generally found if we have internal disagreements, what's really helpful is to make them very public and absolutely burn the party down as we do so, which is kind of what just happened. Look, I kind of have this rule of thumb, and it's, as Democrats, we agree on the underlying, like we agree on the principle in public, and then we discuss the policy behind closed doors, right? So if you and I have a disagreement on a certain economic policy, it's not helpful to the party if we get in a Twitter fight about it, right? We should talk about that amongst ourselves. But when there's a disagreement on the principle, I think that is something that has to be done in public, because when someone is doing something that is against a principle you stand for, if you don't say anything, silence is complicitness. You know what I mean? And so I think the problem here is, I don't even want to say it appears, because it seems to have happened. People that have disagreed with the principle of how these allegations were handled and how the victims have been treated are being punished. That to me is not the way to run a party. But also, like, look, that's just a terrible look from every standard. Like, you're creating a precedent of basically, hey, if you've been the victim of some sort of harassment or sexual, mistreatment, well, I don't know if I want to come forward and say anything, because they'll drag me out of the fucking building in public. I don't know if I stand up for that person, I may get kicked out of the council or out of the caucus. Like, the fact that they would go after people in this way, I think is counterproductive to what we're trying to build and stand for as a party. We are not talking about some policy disagreement. We are talking about the way that reports and sexual harassment, how it was handled. Those are very different things. And by removing her from the caucus, they actually made this more public. They made it more of a problem than it already was. It sounds like complete internal mismanagement, but also as a party, guys, come on. Everybody can see what's happening right now. Like, we're showing our ass right now, and it's not helpful to us to build a party that way.
Yeah. Derrick, you've run for office. You have a D next to your name. You're trying to run for office in Indiana. Joe Hogsett's the mayor of Indianapolis. He's the Democrat, I think, most Hoosiers know. He's the one they talk about on the local news, right? That gotta be, but him and Andre Carson are probably the most high profile elected Democrats in Indiana. Carson's got a relatively small district. It's Hogsett's got the whole city county. He actually has a bigger district than Carson does. Does being tied to a guy like Hogsett hurt you when you're trying to run?
I believe being tied to anyone that's going through any type of allegation is tough to do. But if deep down inside you feel that this person is being wrongfully attacked, then you got to live up to your morals and stick with them. I I must admit I don't know too much about the story because I'm down in Morgan County. I'm more worried about, the fourth district. Indianapolis is its own beast type thing. But yeah, I mean, it's sad. I was a junior paralegal under Hogsett when he was an attorney, right before he became the federal district attorney.
Yeah.
I've played golf with the man. Um, he's a great guy. At least he was, 20 years ago. A lot changes in 20 years. So, I mean, I feel bad, but if, you know, you sleep in the bed that you make. So I really want to know more about the mayor's part in all of this.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the biggest strike against Hogsett in this whole thing is that he let Cook kind of run wild, under his administration, protected him, kept him employed even well after he knew about these things. Carlie, what do you could Hogsett can he make this go away, or is he gonna have to resign to give the city a new direction?
I think he would have to resign to have some progress forward for the whole party, but will he? I doubt it. I've been very critical against the party and their response to what's happening in Indy, and especially the state party and their response, their statement that they didn't even name Hogsett. So I just think if the Democratic Party wants to set a tone for moving forward and how they're going to protect the people who work for them and to advocate for policies. And I mean, these women have gone through, they use their talents, they worked hard for the Democratic Party, and then for them to be just, disregarded and then shoved out of a meeting, that's shameful. That's disgraceful. And for Karen Tallian to have that statement without even Hogsett being named is just, I think she should resign as well, but that's just my personal opinion.
And certainly, I think as we talk later in the show about Zoran Mamdani in New York City and lessons that Indiana can learn from this, we'll come back to the party branding and the internal divisions here in Indiana. But, with that, I don't want to overlook the bastardry of the Republican Party in Indiana, who actually runs things in most of the state. So Mike Braun replaced the entire board of the IEDC, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, stocking it with campaign donors. So this is a 9-person board, and 5 of the 9 new members appointed by Braun had collectively donated approximately $263,000 to his gubernatorial campaign and an additional $16,000 plus to his previous U.S. Senate campaigns. The contributing donors were George Thomas of Granger. He is an RV and trailer executive. Gus Olympidis of Valparaiso, who owns the Family Express convenience stores. We've got Richard Waterfield of Fort Wayne, CEO and chairman of Waterfield Asset Management, equity fund guy. Then we've got Chris King of Shelbyville, construction engineer, is an infrastructure, guy. And a woman named Billy Drago of Indianapolis, the founder and CEO of RepuCare, a workforce solutions. It's a medical staffing agency, basically. He also named, now somebody who's not a donor, but he named to the board Greg Gibson of Terre Haute, a commercial real estate developer, who had also previously founded Spectacle Entertainment in a bid to bring a casino to Terre Haute. And his co-founder of that organization faced federal charges in an ongoing investigation, in which one former lawmaker has already pled guilty. Now, to be fair, he did appoint a couple other folks, former Democratic House Speaker and gubernatorial nominee John Gregg, as well as David Fagan, a union guy from Portage. But in contrast to Holcomb, Braun appointed just one woman, and it doesn't appear to have any people of color on his new board. Derrick, Braun vowed to reform the IEDC to increase transparency. How is he going to do that? How is he going to change the perception of this agency when it just looks like a big sloppy kiss between him and his donors?
Well, I mean, if it brings money into their pockets, that'll be great for them. But yeah, it's cronyism at its best. We've been dealing with that for decades when it comes to Republican Party. It does not surprise me whatsoever. It's not going to be transparent. It's just going to be same-o, same-o. It probably will get worse.
It would not surprise me. You know, the Republicans in government like to talk a lot about waste, fraud, and abuse. And we've got some examples of that again this week. So Governor Braun confirmed, and this is from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, confirmed that Indiana spent over $1 million in the last year on lethal injection drugs. Some of which were used and some of which expired on the shelf. So, reporting by the Indiana Capitol Chronicle previous revealed that at least $900,000 was spent by Holcomb's administration to purchase pentobarbital. This execution drug was used in December to carry out the death penalty for convicted killer Joseph Corcoran, and again in May for the execution of Benjamin Ritchie. Now, here's some Braun quotes, and I want you to pay attention to how casually he talks about this like a financial transaction and not like, you know, people's lives. He says, quote, "It was tricky because if you acquired it, then there was some type of glitch. Then you go into the same thing that happened with the Holcomb administration, which bought 3 doses, anticipating more executions. It was a question of when you were going to actually get it and not be stranded with it." He says, "You're dealing with a source of the execution drugs that's very hard to pin down if it's going to be available. It's not like you can get it from several places." Josh, like, we're talking about all this government waste, and they let like $500,000 worth of drugs expire on the shelf, not to mention the fact that death penalty cases take a lot of financial resources as well. Wouldn't it both be the morally correct thing to do and the fiscally correct thing to do to, I don't know, not execute people?
You know, that was actually one of the things that I realized. So I started my legal career at the Attorney General's office, not under Todd or Keita. But one of the things that I was surprised and learned was just the financial cost, like not in addition to the moral issue, right? Like the financial cost of executing someone. There's an entire extra set of appeals they get. There's a lot more court procedures. It's the drugs. Like it actually costs the state more money to execute someone than to just keep them, you know, in prison for the rest of their lives. Also, I don't think the death penalty is for no other reason than, you know, trying to get some sort of retribution, because no one is about to commit a crime and says, "Oh, I might get the death penalty instead of life in jail," and decides not to do it. Right.
Right.
But on top of that, like this whole look, man, the drugs, the IEDC, this all goes back to what we saw with Doge, right? Fraud, waste, and abuse for Republicans is a cover to get rid of things that they don't want the government to do. If they don't like it, they call it fraud. If they don't like it, they call it waste. They call it abuse. If it's something they like, you can throw any amount of money at it, and it doesn't matter. And the voters have not seemed to penalize them for this. I found very interesting listening to interviews and focus groups and all types of things with voters. They don't like this cronyism. They don't like the way that contracts are handed out to friends. They don't like that money's being wasted. It's just not enough to change their vote. If they're going to vote Republican, they don't like that stuff, but it's not going to make them vote for a Democrat. And I think what has happened over the last few years is Republicans like Braun, Republicans like Trump, all of them have realized, oh, this won't cause a voter to not vote for me, so I can do whatever I want. I can use the government to enrich my friends. I can use the government to enrich myself, and the voters will not change their vote. And I think they're just taking full advantage of what they've realized.
Yeah. Also, in the government waste department, this one's waste and fraud, because the Indiana taxpayers have been on the hook for about $500,000 in legal bills defending this fraud pictured here, Todd Rokita, from the indispensable Indiana Capitol Chronicle. Quote, the state paid 4 law firms a combined $491,500 between 2022 and 2025 to represent Rokita in at least 6 separate matters before the Indiana Supreme Court Disciplinary Commission, investigations that the Republican describes as politically motivated and retaliatory. Now, only 2 of these investigations have resulted in formal disciplinary charges, although this is the Attorney General of your state isn't one too many. The ongoing complaints stem from Rokita's nationally televised comments in June of 22 about Indianapolis OBGYN Dr. Caitlin Bernard, who oversaw an abortion for a 10-year-old Ohio girl who had been raped by a family member. Now, State Rep Ed Delaney says, quote, we're paying 4 law firms close to $500,000 so that Todd Rokita can keep his law license and stay in office. That is a campaign expense, not something the public should have to fund, end quote. Now, Rokita, for his part, claims these are politically motivated attacks, saying the commission acted with a deliberate and reckless disregard for the truth. Now, Carlie, you investigate corruption. That's what you talk about on your social media accounts.
Yeah.
Isn't the Attorney General basically using state funds to cover up for going on like a political crusade?
Yeah, and I
don't know, corrupt? Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, and I hope that, like, what Josh said, that the constituents are on the hook for the bills, but I mean, are we caring enough to vote differently to make sure that this isn't going to happen? And I think, like, that's what I've been trying to do on a local level, is trying to inform people that when we vote people in who are corrupt and who are going to utilize the resources that these agencies have for personal use, and instead of their constituents that they're supposed to be serving, they're going to be at risk for lawsuits, or I mean, so then who's going to be on the hook for that in those legal bills? The taxpayers. So how do we inform the constituents, like, they are going to be impacted by paying for these bills, and because they are not good leaders and representations of what we need as leadership in Indiana, or the rest of the country. So we shouldn't be paying for that. They shouldn't be in office. Yeah. But this does give me hope, that I'm hoping with this disciplinary commission the investigation. I'm hoping that the prosecutor in my area that I'm from, there's going to be action there. So this does give me hope.
Yeah. So kind of in summary, these last two stories, we spent over $1 million on these execution drugs. We spent about $500,000 on Rokita's legal bills. So that's about $1.5 million that could be spent somewhere else, like perhaps at the Indiana School for the Deaf. This one here, this is from WTHR Channel 13. The school for the deaf in Indianapolis serves about 350 deaf and hard of hearing children. The state, facing a budget crisis, slashed the school's funding by 5%. Advocates with the Indiana Association of the Deaf say that amounts to about $3 million. This has forced 26 layoffs, including teachers and nurses, plus no more Camp Willard, an annual summer camp for the young deaf kids. There will be no overnight health care for emergencies for the children who stay in dorms at the schools. Catherine Vest, vice president of the Indiana Association of the Deaf, said the cuts feel targeted, especially since traditional schools largely got spared from cuts in the budget. She says, "This is not justice. This is not equal access. Both private and public schools got a 2% increase, and they received a 5% cut." So apparently this is because lawmakers consider the Indiana School for the Deaf a state agency more than a school, which means it, like other state agencies, got an across-the-board 5% cut. Derek, does this piss you off as much as it pisses me off? We're taking money away from disabled kids, basically, and giving it to Todd Rokita, or using it to kill people, or letting it expire on the shelves.
Well, the Republicans hate DEI, and this is a straight attack at DEI. My mother-in-law, rest her soul, was completely deaf. She went to the Indiana Deaf School. So, this one strikes pretty close to home for my family. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Especially, going into the next segment. We're raising money for, rich people to go to school, but not those who truly need it. It's insane.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned too far. Oop. So the vouchers, you're talking about sending, rich kids to school. So this one from WFYI, the public radio in Indianapolis. Indiana's private school voucher program grew to more than 76,000 students this year, with the state spending nearly $500 million to subsidize tuition at private, parochial, and non-religious schools. Well, there's your money for the deaf kids, plus several hundred million. The IDOE annual scholarship report shows the program's growth has slowed compared to a recent surge after the eligibility was broadly expanded. But the state paid $497 million in tuition grants, a 13% increase over the previous year. In this last legislative session, state lawmakers removed all income requirements starting in July 2026, so that will only increase the cost of the program to extend it to the very wealthiest of families. Now, the story says vouchers were originally created to help low-income students and those in struggling public schools access private education. Maybe the current iteration of vouchers since about the 90s, but vouchers were originally created to, foster white flight away from recently segregated schools in the 1950s. But today, instead of these low-income students that these vouchers are supposed to help, the average student in the program is a white, female elementary student from a metropolitan area household with an annual income of more than $100,000. families earning less than $100,000 now represent just under 53% of participants. So, Josh, tell me if I get this right. It sounds like we're taking money away from kids in the cities, especially kids in rural areas who don't have access to these other kind of schools, and we're giving it to the wealthiest families, and it's costing the state $500 million. Make it make sense.
We are defunding our public schools to subsidize private companies. We have to remember there are two actual goals, I think. One is for the state to find a way to subsidize the education they want, right? They want there to be religious schools that are funded by the taxpayer dollar. You couldn't do that directly, so they use vouchers to get around that. But we also can't separate the fact that these private schools are private companies, and that this is a way to funnel more money to them. It's what I said earlier about like the IEDC. You know what I mean? Like, the Republicans have just realized we can use the taxpayer funds to give handouts to all of our business donors, and the voters won't do anything in response to it. The thing I would like to see is, like, if it really is just about controlling education and letting parents have their own choice in schools, it's not about trying to find a way to fund religious education. What if we opened up just like the most left-wing school, like the Bernie Sanders School of Marxism or something? And I'm talking go all in, right? And let's see if they don't go then change the law on who vouchers can go to.
I like it. Interesting thought there. So last thing in our Indiana stories here, another education story, this time at the other end of things in higher ed. Hundreds of IU degree programs are at risk of disappearing. And this is from WFYI again. Indiana University could lose hundreds of degree programs as part of compliance with an array of new laws affecting higher education that passed at the 11th hour of the legislative session, one of which requires public colleges and universities to eliminate programs with low numbers of degrees, averaged over a 3-year period. Most of these degrees with low numbers of recipients are in humanities and languages. Jewish studies, classical studies, multiple language departments could lose their main offerings. From 2020 to 2022, IU Bloomington, I am an alum, and I live in Bloomington here, conferred more humanities doctorates than any other university in the country. According to data from Carnegie Classifications, it also ranks first for number of languages taught. The law allows universities to petition the Indiana Commission for Higher Education for exceptions, but you know what is that? That amounts to grovel and we'll think about it. So, to comply with this law, the school is proposing to merge many of degree programs, perhaps. I get why they want to maybe focus on certain STEM programs and such, maybe stuff that's more, quote unquote, employable for the economy of tomorrow, or whatnot. But number one, that's what Purdue's for. That's your STEM school. Number two, like, what happened to just learning for learning's sake? It feels like Republicans do not value that whatsoever. Foreign languages are woke now, apparently. We're running a little long, so I'm going to move on and not spend a bunch of time commenting on this. I did just want to point it out. Just more attacks on education at all levels from the Republicans here in Indiana. But our one big thing this week in New York, Zoran Mamdani, a 33-year-old Democratic socialist, won the Democratic primary for mayor of New York. Now, all the final numbers aren't quite in. They do use ranked choice voting there, but it's a quite a big upset as mainstream Democrats were backing former Governor Andrew Cuomo. This is the big story of the week. The news is all over this thing. What does it mean for Democrats? What does it mean for New York? Can Democrats nationwide learn anything from it? And, for our purposes, can us folks here in Indiana learn anything from it? Now, I want to start with the Republican reaction because it is as unhinged as you would expect. Donald Trump called him a, quote, 100% communist lunatic, writing on his Truth Social site, "We've had radical lefties before, but this is getting a little ridiculous." Laura Loomer posted on X that there will be another 9/11 in New York City under Mamdani's leadership. And Stephen Miller, Trump's whisperer and immigration hardliner, says, quote, "New York City is the clearest warning yet of what happens to a society when it fails to control migration." What is the most unhinged thing you've seen from Republicans this week about Mamdani? Carlie, I haven't heard from you in a minute.
I think you had listed that somebody had said that he needed to get deported, and I think it's just the racist rhetoric is disturbing, and I think they're just honestly they're scared because they saw the outcome, and now they're they get so defensive when they're intimidated by his success. So I'm all for it, but I just really wish the racism rhetoric would be eliminated from their agenda, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, that's kind of where Republicans have been on this. Yeah, it was Andy Ogles, a House member from Tennessee, who said on X that, yeah, Mamdani should be deported and denaturalized. Right? This is an American citizen. This is a kid who grew up here. It makes me sick to say the words that he said, but he said, "Zoran Little Muhammad Mamdani is an anti-Semitic socialist communist who will destroy the great city of New York. He needs to be deported." Yeah, it says, "This is why I'm calling for him to be subject to denaturalization proceedings." That is probably, the grossest thing I've seen him say this week. But it's not just the Republicans, right? Democrats, too, have they've not gone with the racism overtly so much, although New York Senator Kristen Gillibrand got pretty Islamophobic with some of her comments. So, Derrick, what do you think of the mainstream Democratic response to Mamdani?
It's shock. It is purely shock from them. They did not think somebody could come from grassroots area and actually take the nomination. I mean, it's shaking the party. Pretty bad. But yeah, the Islamophobic rants are ridiculous against anyone. To call him anti-Semitic because of his opposition to the Israeli-Iran war. I'm Jewish myself, and I criticize the Israeli-Iran war. You're not criticizing the people of Israel. You're criticizing the government. You and I had a lengthy discussion a couple months ago about this whole issue. I mean, it's not anti-Semitic to, go against the state of Israel because they're doing stupid crap. But I mean, it's a wake-up call for the Democratic Party.
Absolutely. So some of these what they call third way Democrats, it's a centrist group. This is Matt Bennett, the co-founder of Third Way. He warned that Mamdani's policies are a political problem for the Democratic Party. He says, quote, the fact that Mamdani is young, charismatic, a great communicator, all of those things are to be emulated, but his ideas are bad and his affiliation with the Democratic Socialists of America is very dangerous. It's already being weaponized by the Republicans. Josh, you're a Democratic Party leader in this state. Do you think Mamdani and his, democratic socialism makes things more difficult for you?
I don't see how it affects me, to be honest, right? Like, I think something that I've always found weird about the way the Democratic Party operates in general is the way they don't ever look at things in like the Overton window of how things move left or right. And when a Republican is as right wing as you can get and makes it through their primary, the party circles around them. And they may have a lot of views that aren't mainstream, but in elections, it boils down to Republican versus Democrat. And they're saying we're in a circle around the Republican because we need Republicans. And they then, a lot of those Republicans to support the right-wing nut, then will go and say, hey, guys, just because he has this crazy view on something, he's not going to be able to do anything with it, right? Once he gets in charge, there's going to be checks and balances. But then when it comes to the Democrats, we act as though everything that someone proposes will become law the day they get elected. And like Zoran would be the mayor of New York City. He is not the president of the country who has been given unlimited power by the Supreme Court. Like, you need, in a healthy party, in a healthy system, people to pull on both sides. And what I find to be a problem is a lot of time the Democrats feel like the only people we can put forward are those people in the middle. Well, that keeps letting the Overton window shift farther right and farther right and farther right. And there's never anyone pulling it back to the left. And for some reason, one of the most common things I hear is Democrats say, well, but here's the problem with Zoran. That wouldn't work in Wisconsin. It doesn't have to work in Wisconsin. He's running for the mayor of New York City. So why they're coming out and attacking somebody that's a part of our party when what we should do is, okay, the voters in New York City decided who their mayoral candidate's going to be. Now you rally around them. But we don't have that same desire, I don't know, to push the party forward, to win races. It seems like we're stuck in this vicious loop of how can we get the most generic person on the ballot, whether or not we lose over and over. It's like, yeah, look, we're hitting our head against the wall, but maybe we just need to hit our head a little bit harder this time.
It's a poor negotiating tactic, right? Like, you don't negotiate from the center. You don't negotiate from where you're going to wind up. You start, ask for the moon. And I think that's, good policy. The Republicans do it. They, mass deportation now, right? And then they do it. But, we can't talk about the big, bold things we want to do. Because apparently that's supposed to scare people. What happened to vote blue no matter who, right? I remember, like, when the left complained about the meek centrism of Kamala Harris's campaign last year. Folks were kind of told to suck it up and vote blue no matter who, right? Well, Zoran's the Democratic nominee in New York. Vote blue no matter who. Yet Andrew Cuomo, who the establishment Democrats lined up behind in this race, in this primary, is now going to run as an independent. So you've got like a four-way race, at least in New York now, between Zoran and, the incumbent Eric Adams is still there. He's an independent who was originally elected as a Democrat. It's questionable whether he has any Democratic leanings whatsoever. And then you also have this like far right guardian angels guy, this like vigilante group. Curtis Lee was the Republican in that race, and then you got Cuomo. So how far are centrist Dems going to go to crush this guy? Carlie, do you think they're going to line up behind Cuomo again going into the general?
I mean, I would think so. If they, knowing the history of how they're sabotaging, candidates, I think that this is just another way of them doing that. But if they really are about a democratic or democracy, then why wouldn't they be listening to the people? The people spoke. They want Mamdani. So why wouldn't they just go with what the people want and then support the candidate that the people want? And Cuomo, I mean, if I were him, I'd be like, okay, like I'm going to go sit down, retire, whatever he wants to do next. But just, take the L and go,
And just such a toxic guy also.
Exactly.
And this is where I want to tie this back to Indiana. We're talking about these like establishment figures like Cuomo, and then you look at Indianapolis like Joe Hogsett, who is like an extremely poor man's Andrew Cuomo. The same kind of creepy guy. Cuomo's a little more handsy, but is the same thing. Milquetoast kind of centrism, Republican light, business friendly, in the bag for the like the real estate developers, and keeping the left down, keeping the machine in place, ruining the Democratic brand. You see, when you have youth and dynamism and big ideas, how enticing that can be to the people. And I don't think that the people of New York and the people of Indiana are terribly different when it comes down to it in the long run. I think I think everybody kind of wants the same things in life. We want clean air and water. We want somewhere to live. We want to be able to afford to live. We want a good paying job. That doesn't matter if you're in New York, Indianapolis, or like, Batesville or somewhere. People want what they want. They want government to work for them and not for the rich. I think the person who said it best is Bernie Sanders, who tweeted, "People like Mamdani are the worst nightmares. It's one thing for the Democrats to be strongly against Donald Trump. It is another thing to give working class people something to vote for, a positive agenda." He says, here it is. "You have talked for 6 months about the need to create political excitement to get working class and young people involved in the political process. That's exactly what Zoran did. Get behind him." There it is, right there. That people in Indiana, people everywhere, Democrats nationwide, I think, can take that to the bank. People want bold. They want big. They don't want more of the same. Am I seeing that correctly? Am I a naive leftist, bleeding heart liberal or whatever? Josh, start this off.
Well, dude, we're not just going to skip over the fact that you have SNL level of impersonations. Like, this is high quality stuff. I will expect a Who's Left variety show coming soon. Look, I think
we'll need some help with the script.
Exactly. I think for the past 10 years, voters have shown they're mad with the status quo. Now, why that is, I think part of it is with social media, we're apt to messages that say everything is wrong and everything is falling apart. With that said, that's still what voters are going for, right? So I don't know why. I feel like too often Democratic consultants, Democratic, leaders, they are trying to say, here is what we think voters should want, and so let's pull the voters there, as opposed to saying, hey, here's what voters want. Let's go over there. And also, like, we can't separate the fact that these people aren't made in a lab, right? Like, candidates are literal people. And all the time people will say, well, what would be perfect is if we had a candidate that was X, Y, and Z. Well, there's not a person that is the perfect mix of X, Y, and Z. At a certain point, the candidates are people. They have their views, they have their beliefs, and we have to choose who are the best ones. And if Zoran can get it done, he can get it done. Just because he doesn't have the exact perfect mix of what somebody may want, sorry, that the perfect person in a lab doesn't really exist. Everybody keeps saying, well, if we had another Obama, we had one of those in 50 years. All right. The way that somebody was able to talk to everyone and get so much consensus view, that's why you call someone a generational talent. It's not just sitting there and someone's choosing not to do it. If I could do it, I would do it. Right. Like I couldn't win. That's why I couldn't win office. So like, Zoran's good. He's a good politician. He's good at media. He's good at talking. Like, Democratic Party just
ground game, the massive ground game in New York.
Like, you got somebody, like, if you have a winner, go with a winner. Like, you don't bench your best player just because he's not the player that you wanted out there. Like, if somebody's winning, they're winning.
Yeah, exactly. And sorry. So, Derrick, you know, what are your thoughts? Is this relevant to Indiana, or am I, you know, seeing things that aren't there?
No, it's relevant. It's extremely relevant. I've been posting like crazy for the past month or two that I know this is very unpopular, but burn it all down, restart, bottom up. We need grassroots, not who the state or the DNC want to run. I mean, candidates like Blythe Potter, Michael Potter, Michelle Higgs, Veronica Martz, Josh, Destiny Wells, they're grassroots. Tiffany Stoner, I mean, 64 votes. It's like, oh my God. They are very grassroots. I mean, I could tell you from personal experience, the party did not want me to run last year because there was already somebody running. And I mean, the people chose, you know, me to be the Democratic candidate for District 4. We have to leave it to the people, and we have to be where the people are.
Yeah.
I think the party as a whole, and there are exceptions out there, obviously. I mentioned a few. The party as a whole has forgotten our grassroots. I mean, we need to go back to FDR and the Second Bill of Rights. I mean, everybody deserves a fair education, safety, decent house, decent work, medical insurance. And I'm a strong believer that the entire DNC should run on that platform. We need to go back to FDR and be less reactionary. It's like we don't have a ground game. And we're losing like crazy here in Indiana. There is no reason that every candidate except for Mervan and Carson lost 30-70. Every single one of us except for Deb Pinkett in Spartz's district. The rest of us was 70-30. To me, that's a little too perfect for all the other ones, other 6 districts to all be at that number. But it's like, yeah, we need a serious change. I was very, very upset about who was chosen for the state chair. I was very much for Destiny. She would have completely changed our game plan. But we stuck with the old soldiers. And we need new blood.
Yeah, absolutely. And even more so than age or how long you've been around. I think one of the things that people that resonated with people about Mamdani is that he was authentic. He was just himself. This is a guy. He used to be a rapper under the stage name Young Cardamom, right? He talked about. He used the phrase "globalize the Intifada," which just means struggle, right? It's not like ooh bad words, but got crap about it for being anti-Semitic. He didn't apologize. He explained. You don't want you don't have to try and fit yourself in this box. You don't apologize for being yourself. You just do it. Carlie, is that what what I'm seeing? Does that
Yeah.
match up with what you see? It's just like he doesn't try to be something he's not, and people I think like that.
Yeah, I think being authentic is so powerful in today's world. And I think that's why a lot of people vote for Trump, because he doesn't try to be somebody that he's not. I mean, people love who he is. And when people try to put on this persona that they are, I feel like a lot of times Democrats, they think that they're superior, or they put themselves above others because they're more educated or they have more money. And if we are the party about inclusion, then we have to be relatable, like we have to be with the people. And that's what Zoran did. Like, he is a person, like, people can relate to him. He utilized social media to his advantage. And I think that's what helped him in a lot of ways. And I hope that candidates in Indiana can do that as well, because if you're not going to get a lot of support from the state party, then you have to utilize social media to your advantage, especially with fundraising as well. And I'm really excited, and I hope that the party sees that and they can move forward in progress, and hopefully and I hope that Destiny Wells will continue with the party, and I hope that she didn't give up on Indiana.
All right. Well, thank you, Carlie. That's where we're going to have to leave this thing today. I want to thank you all for being here and give you a chance to tell the folks where they can find you. Josh, where can the good people listen to that podcast and find out more information about you?
Yeah, so On Trial with Josh Lowry, you can find it YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere podcasts are available. And I just real quick have to toss in one thing, because I don't think this is actually getting talked about on social media at all. And I know this is going to be counter to everything that we all hear and see on TikTok. When we're talking about the party, those are still people, just like I was saying earlier with candidates, right? I think most people would look at the way that I do things and say, that's a little bit different. That's more grassroots. That's going to the base. I'm the chair of the Hamilton County Democratic Party, and I could tell you the state party chair, Karen Talion, has been nothing but supportive. I think a lot of times that we listen to a lot of the voices that do say everything you're doing is wrong. You got to do this, X, Y, and Z. But then those people don't always get involved. Like, I'm just to say the honest part. I have a ton of people that always tell me everything I'm doing wrong and what candidates should do, but they don't run for office. They don't get involved in the party. And I understand, like, I would not include Destiny there because obviously she ran to be the state chair, right? But I think there's more people within the party that are willing to let us to try to do different stuff. There just hasn't always been somebody that's willing to take the job and then try to do something different. So I could tell you from being with inside, so far I've not gotten any pushback on the way that I'm trying to do things. So I think voters should have some optimism that when somebody comes along that wants to do things differently, I do think Indiana might be more open to it. But we also can't just think that, hey, if all of a sudden somebody ran to the left, everything's going to be solved. We still have to be able to support that person. And also, we can't ignore the fact that the real reason we're losing so bad in Indiana is not because the party was run poorly. It's because 50 years of right-wing media has created an idea in voters that you can't support Democrats. That's not going to suddenly be fixed just because we have a more progressive candidate. We have to take on the right-wing media. We have to keep building the party. Could we do things better? Of course. But I think it's a little too simplistic to just say, hey, if Zoran was here, everything would be fixed. Everybody's listening to this. Get involved somehow. Find a way to do your part and do your part.
Thank you, Josh. Well said. Derrick, where can folks get a hold of you?
I'm mostly on Facebook and Insta these days. It's just the People's Fourth. It's a page dedicated to the 4th Congressional District. I am also a political consultant. So if you need any speeches written, the photographs, anything for your campaign, shoot me a message and we'll talk about it. Yeah, that's pretty much it right now.
All right. Thank you, sir. Carlie, where can the good folks find you?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and my TikTok and Instagram is Carlie with IE. But you can find me, I think, with my first and last name.
All right, and yeah, you're putting out great content, calling out some corrupt actors up there in LaPorte County. We appreciate that, and folks can find me at HoosLeft.us. Until next week, I want to say on behalf of my panel, Josh Lowry, Derrick Holder, and Carlie Dunn, thanks for joining us here today. Until the next one, love each other, Indiana.